Simon could now see the cloaked and hooded figures who made up the column, a silent host moving with ritual precision. "I'm on the dream road," he realized suddenly. "Amaterasu said that I was closer to it than other folk." But what was he watching? The line of torchbearers reached a level place and spread out in a sparkling fan, so that their lights were carried far out on either side of the hilltop. It was Seswadra they had climbed, but a Seswadra that even by torchlight was plainly different than the place Simon knew. The ruins that had surrounded him were ruins no longer. Every pillar and wall stood unbroken. Was this the past? The stone of farewell as it once had been? Or was it some strange future version that would some day be rebuilt, perhaps when the Storm King had subjugated all Osten Ard? The great company surged forward onto a flat place Simon recognized as the fire garden. There the cloaked figures set their torches down into niches between the tiles, or placed them atop stone pedestals, so that a garden of fire indeed bloomed there, a field of flickering, rippling light. Fanned by the wind, the flames danced. Sparks seemed to outnumber the very stars. Now Simon found himself suddenly pulled forward with the surging crowd and down toward the leave-taking house. He plummeted through the glittering night, passing swiftly through the stone walls and into the bright-lit hall as though he were without substance. There was no sound, but a continuous rushing in his ears. Seen closely, the images before him seemed to shift and blur along their edges, as though the world had been twisted ever so slightly out of its natural shape. Unsettled, he tried to close his eyes, but found that his dream self could not shut out these visions. He could only watch, a helpless phantom. Many figures stood at the great table. Globes of cold fire had been placed in alcoves on every wall, their blue, fire-orange, and yellow glows casting long shadows across the carved walls. More and deeper shadows were cast by the thing atop the table, a construct of concentric spheres like the great astrolabe Simon had often polished for Dr. Morgani's. But instead of brass and oak, this was made entirely from lines of smouldering light, as though someone had painted the fanciful shapes upon the air in liquid fire. The moving figures that surrounded it were hazy, but still Simon knew beyond doubt that they were Scythi. No one could ever mistake those bird-like postures, that silken grace. A Scyther woman in a sky-blue robe leaned toward the table, and deftly scribed in trails of finger flame her own additions to the glowing thing. Her hair was blacker than shadow, blacker even than the night sky above Seswadra. A great cloud of darkness about her head and shoulders. For a moment Simon thought she might be a younger Amaterasu, but though there was much in this one that was like his memories of first grandmother, there was also much that was not. Beside her stood a white-bearded man in a billowing crimson robe. Shapes that might have been pale antlers sprouted from his brow, bringing Simon a pang of unease. He had seen something like that in other, more unpleasant dreams. The bearded man leaned forward and spoke to her. She turned and added a new swirl of fire to the design. Although Simon could not see the dark woman's face clearly, the one who stood across from her was all too plain. That face was hidden behind a mask of silver, the rest of her form beneath ice-white robes. As if in answer to the black-haired woman, the Norn queen raised her arm and slashed a line of dull fire all the way across the construct, then waved her hand once more to lay a net of delicately smoking scarlet light over the outermost globe. A man stood beside her, calmly watching her every move. He was tall and seemed powerfully built, dressed all in spiky armor of obsidian black. He was not masked in silver or otherwise, but still Simon could see little of his features. What were they doing? Was this the pact of parting that Simon had heard of? For certainly he was watching both Scythi and Norn gathered together upon Seswadra. The blurred figures began to talk more animatedly, Looping and crisscrossing lines of flame were thrown into the air around the spheres, where they hung in nothingness, bright as the after-image of a hurtling fire arrow. Their speech seemed to turn to harsh words, many of the shadowy observers gesticulating with more anger than Simon had seen in the immortals he knew, stepped forward to the table and surrounded the principal foursome. But still he could hear nothing but a dull roaring like wind or rushing water. The flame globes at the center of the dispute flared up, undulating like a wind-licked bonfire. Simon wished he could move forward somehow to get a better view. Was this the past he was watching? Had it seeped up from the haunted stone? Or was it only a dream, an imagining brought on by his long night, and the songs he had heard in Zhao e Tanukai? Somehow he felt sure that it was no illusion. It seemed so real. He felt almost as though he could reach out. He could reach out and touch. The sound in his ears began to fade. The lights of torches and spheres dimmed. Simon shivered back into awareness. He was sitting atop the crumbling stone of the observatory, dangerously close to the edge. The city were gone. There were no torches in the fire garden, and no living things visible atop Seswadra except a pair of sentries sitting near the watchfire down beside the tent city. Bemused, Simon sat for a little while staring at the distant flames and tried to understand what he had seen. Did it mean something? Or was it just a meaningless remnant? A name scratched upon a wall by a traveller which remained long after that person was gone.